Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where we talk about TV shows or dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Shōgun Season 1, Episode 7. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I thought it was interesting the moment we got the opening. At first, I was like, wait, there's no way we're moving past everything, because Toranaga was like, oh, we're doing Crimson Sky. He said that in the last episode, but I'm like, there's no way they're just going to skip over that battle, right? But I was like, no, it's got to be in the past. My immediate thought then was like, oh, it must be like and we heard the name Toranaga, so I'm like, oh, it must be like his dad. It's like, no, it's him on a battlefield as a 12-year-old. In fact, it was his first ever battle, him defeating his opponent, and his opponent being like, yo, I want it to be like noted and record, like, you know, first and foremost this and that. Like, I basically kind of had to give up to him, and he's going to commit seppuku, which I constantly forget that. I mean, I always associate, once again, the disembowelment as part of seppuku, but I guess the beheading aspect, maybe that's only in battle. Like, maybe traditionally, like, if you're committing seppuku on your own, then it's not, like, just for honor purposes. Then in a more traditional sense, then maybe you don't have to have the beheading. I don't know if that, I feel like, part of me is like, I feel like I vaguely remembered that, but I'm also like, maybe I'm just giving myself too much credit. Like I said, I don't know if that's just an honor in battle, and the beheadment is not necessarily in other aspects, or is it like always across the board, it always ends with a beheadment. But I was like, yeah, he wants Toranaga to be his opponent wanted him to be his second, so for Toranaga to be the one to slice his head off. And so that's interesting. And then we cut to present day where Toranaga is meeting with his brother Saiki, and it's like, right, so, you know, even Yabushige is asking, I believe it was Hiromatsu, he was asking, like, so it's like, if his brother doesn't join us, what do we do? It's like, then the fight's lost before we even before our blades get wet. Like, it's going to be done because we won't have the support, especially considering Toranaga lost a lot of his built-up army 2 episodes back. So, you know, gotta make these moves happen type of situation, which at first it seems like, hey, Saiki's like willing and able. I thought it was kind of an interesting little thing where, like, Buntaro came over to be like, yo, make sure that the Ajin, like the barbarian, keeps his shit together. And, you know, and just like Mariko just staring straight ahead, just being like, yes, I know, my lord. And just kind of, you know, and, you know, obviously he was on his best behavior. Mariko taught him everything he needed to say in that moment. He's bowing. And it's like, oh, it's an honor to meet Toranaga's brother. Like, obviously he said in a much more, like, formal sense. But it is a situation of, before we even talk about what's next, let's bask in the glory and just, like, let's get drunk and have fun type of situation. We also learned that Kiku's services have been grabbed up, because now it's like, and you can tell, just it bothers Omi on so many regards. I mean, I love that the people who hate John the most, Buntaro and Omi, were literally standing beside each other, because both of them hate him for similar reasons. Of, he's gaining all this attention. From Buntaro's case, it's like he's gaining all this attention from Mariko. From Omi, it's like, yo, like, everything that kind of should come to me is kind of going to him. Nagakado doesn't seem like he shares a lot of that. He kind of supports his father's decisions, whatever it may be. He may have his issues with him, but, like, that's mainly an Omi and Buntaro thing, like, who have a very specific type of hate for John, which I think is so interesting. But either way, Kiku's been, her services have been bought for a week to be with Saiki. And yeah, Omi wasn't too happy about that. Once again, he lost the regiment. Well, first it was like, he had to be reminded by his uncle, no, it's mine. How are you going to give me something that's mine? Then it was taken by Toranaga and given to John. And then once again, not only that, it's like, oh, cool, the woman I'm in love with. It isn't just like like, he specifically gets Kiku every time, because it's more than just like it's a weird thing. It's like the whole notion of, like, hey, don't fall in love with a stripper. You know, it's like, it's a job thing of, like, I think, you know, Kiku's just really good at her job. Maybe there is a part of her that cares about Omi, but it's like, he's definitely very attached to her, but it's also the thing of, it is my job. So, you know, I mean, we met through my job, so it's not like you can be too pissed off that basically you have to share me. But like I said, they don't really expressly say this, but I can only assume, like, up until this point, he's always been the first one to grab her services. So, like, maybe he's always bought her time in large chunks. So he's always getting her services, and she's always busy, so she never has time with any other clients except for now. Because looking after John last episode, along with now looking after Psyche is like meant to be, takes top priority. But the moment Gin told him like, oh no, she's busy, maybe you can find another courtesan to keep you busy, he's like, no. Can I even just talk to her? He's like, nah, you can't even do that. He's like, because like, once again, bringing up like, oh, she had to spend time with the Anjin. But it's like, and then Gin kind of broke the rules of the tea house, spilling some tea of her own, being like, well, to be fair, while the Anjin was with her, he seemed to be thinking of someone else. I'm like, Omi's the last person who needs to have that information. First and foremost, this place is all about privacy and all that BS that Kiku was talking about last episode to John and Mariko. Why would you be spilling the tea like that? Granted, she doesn't know who it's about, but if Omi brings that back to Buntaro, which maybe he did, and that's why Buntaro was kind of acting the way he was this episode, we'll get to that later. But it's like, you shouldn't, why are you gossiping about business? Like, your whole business is about discretion, So I thought that was just kind of out of pocket, but that in itself could stir up some trouble. So. Which, speaking of Buntaro, he was not too happy at the little gathering and the little dinner, especially because, once again, Omi, it was, because even though they didn't expressly talk about it this episode, once again, he probably did whisper in his ears, like, yeah, I heard about Kiku, like, apparently while the Anjin was with her, like, he was, like, thinking about someone else. I'm sure that fuel, because Buntaro already feels it and sees it, because like Omi being like, oh yeah, they're close, and he's like, yeah, she's doing that for my lord's sake, she's not doing it for the barbarian's sake. So it's like, but Omi's just stoking the fires. He's kind of done that a few times, whether it's with Yabushige, whether it's with Nakakado, and now with Buntaro. But it's like, yeah, seeing them so like chummy and stuff. He made it clear last episode, because of how close she is, she has a wall up when it comes to John, but she still has doesn't have like an iciness to her, as he talked about last episode. Once again, she has so much trauma associated with you because you refused to give her death. There is a sort of freedom she found. She was able to breathe for the first time in 16 years when it's around John. She was able to kind of, I think the eightfold fence of it all, kind of like take yourself far away. John kind of represented a physical manifestation of that eightfold, and then reality kind of came back and sadly slapped her in the face. Not even metaphorically speaking, literally. I mean, probably wouldn't even call it a slap. It probably was a closed fist type of situation. I did think it was interesting at first, Saiki is talking to Nagakado about, battles and honor and stuff, because Nagakado, he's waiting for his first official battle. The Jozen situation doesn't count, because that was kind of like a surprise attack thing. It's not like on the battlefield where he feels like he'll really make a name for himself and build a legacy, because he wants to make his father proud of him. It's like, he wants to make a name for himself. He wants honor on his own merits and stuff like that. Understandable. Rather than just being Toranaga's son, he wants to make a name for himself. And so, talking to his uncle about everything, and telling some stories about Toranaga, he talks a little bit about the story that we saw a glimpse of in episode 1. I mean, not at the beginning of episode 1. Sorry, I don't know what I'm talking about. Sorry. But the battle we saw at the beginning of this episode, when Toranaga was 12. But he also talks about the time that Toranaga referenced this specifically referenced in episode 1, when he was talking to the heir. He was talking about the time he was held as a hostage. But his it's like their mother told him to be brave, and it's like, oh yeah, and Toranaga shit his pants and basically rode on a horse for the entire way. It's like, yeah, I still think about it from time to time. I feel bad for that horse. No one's laughing, everyone's quiet, everyone's almost like, what the fuck are you doing? Why would you say something like you're saying that just to kind of besmirch our Lord? And then we get the reveal that Saiki has betrayed Toranaga. In fact, he's taken Ishido up on being the 5th member of the council, which I love. Toranaga's like, oh yeah, you replaced me with Saiki. It's like, well, they found my replacement in Saiki, which I'm like, feels poetic that it was right, they'd get your half-brother to take your spot. But it's also well, is that even technically filling your spot? Because technically it's filling Sugiyama's spot, considering he got last episode. So it's more so filling Sugiyama's spot. But, it's semantics, right? It doesn't really matter. But yeah, he's going to be the regent. It's like, what else could I get out of this? it's the best win and it's the best deal. It's like maybe if Toranaga had gotten to Psyche first, maybe it'd be a different story. Who knows? They definitely have their issues. He even made it clear, like, yeah, me and my brother have issues, but he is still family at the end of the day. It's just I have to look after my own, just like Nagakado wants to his own legacy. His uncle wants the same thing. It's like I got to make a name for myself, look after my own legacy, you know. Basically, the deal comes down to this, that Toranaga will have to surrender himself and return to Osaka to basically be, once again, face his punishment for his actions and then be killed. And then also, it's like, yeah, also for what happened to Jozen Nagakado, you're going to have to commit seppuku. But he was about to reach for it, but Toranaga was like, do not take it. So it's like, Toranaga's got till tomorrow to make a decision on what he's going to do. And he's contemplating everything, but him and his people are locked into their respective positions. It's like, right, Psyche's people is locking him in, making sure that he can't leave or do anything. So once again, especially considering like, well, if you try to leave, it's going to turn into a bloody mess, and even if you manage to win, you're still going to whittle down your own army. And the whole point was to come here to boost your army to try and go after Ishido and the council, more specifically, like, perform the Crimson Sky, but it's like that becomes less and less possible under the circumstances. So Toranaga is trying to figure out a way. He has an interesting conversation with Gin, who she's coming at it from the perspective of like, if God forbid things play out the way it seems like it's going to, and you think it's going to end up this way. For him, it's like, she's like, I want to make sure that basically I want to place in Edo, like basically replace all the brothel with places like the tea house. Like, yes, it's a brothel, but it's a very specific type of place, because she talks about like, right, women like her and her respective career path, field in life. It's like you kind of give up everything, like every aspect of yourself. That's what it's a part of, like being like the Willow House. Like that's what it means in the service of that. You have to kind of give up everything that you are for that purpose, and then you get discarded the moment you age out of it. And so she wants to be able to create a place. It's almost like a hub for all like that, of all that type of sex work. She wants to kind of create like a home hub for all of that. And it's also because she wants to make a place so that women who age in that career can still, it's like, right, you give up so much of your youth for that career. You should be able to enjoy life upon, instead of just being discarded. I want you to kind of sacrifice so much in your youth, but so you could basically be paid off for it in dividends, in your older age. So, but Toranaga's like, I don't know if that'll really work, considering like how short and unclear my future is. I don't know if that will really benefit you, if I'm even really in a position to help you in that regard. But Gin brought up something really interesting. She was like, right, I know who you are, Toranaga. Like, we all know you to be the clever person that you are. Like, we are both kind of people who came up and squirmed and fought and like got our way to where we are. She's like, I started from the bottom, and I did whatever I need to. She's like, most people would, from the outside perspective, will look at my circumstances as very unfortunate, but my life is what it is, and it's put me in a position to be where I am now, where I am literally the most powerful woman in Izu. So, and just like you have become the man that you've become, so it doesn't make sense to me that a man who has spies, who's able to tell him when an army's approaching, because we've seen time and time again Toranaga's like, his spy network is immense. I mean, granted, that's been like one spy we really focus on, but he's always been quick to know like what someone else is doing. He's always been crafty, and it's like, so why is it that you didn't see this coming, and didn't see an army approaching? Why you didn't see your own army? Like, you left your group, your garrison, exposed after losing a part of them to that earthquake. And he's like, do you think I wanted this? That this is my will? It's fate. He's like, the fact of the matter is my army was decimated. So at first I was like, what is Gin getting at? Because she was kind of implying like, yeah, all your advisors and your generals, everyone around you thinks this is a done deal. Everyone's kind of accepted it, except some people, because some people are just like, I don't know what's going to happen. Will Toranaga come up with a plan? It's unclear. He's still contemplating everything, but it seemed like, he hasn't really come up with anything. But Nagakado was like, no, my dad's going to come up with something. Of course he will. And Gin was kind of implying like, do you have something up your sleeve? Which part of me wonders, maybe we don't know all there is to the Crimson Sky. I mean, as we know, Toranaga's not the biggest on sharing details. Let's go back to the Yabushige situation in, what was it, episode 3, when he snuck out of Osaka, and like no one knew. The only people who knew he had snuck inside one of those things to be carried was Mariko and John. Literally no one else knew not even his own son. So it could be a situation of, yeah, he had to sit down and talk with everyone about Crimson Sky, but maybe, I mean, if anyone knows about it, it might be Hiromatsu, but even he might not know. Like, Toranaga might be playing this super close to the vest. My point is, the whole point of Crimson Sky is to be like this Hail Mary, like, raid of, like, we are striking at Osaka Castle and we're gutting everybody. It's supposed to be that Hail Mary, go all in, all out attack type of situation. But part of me wonders is, like, maybe Toranaga shifted stuff where it's like, all right, I'm kind of boxed into a corner, but if I go to Osaka, I can be on the inside and maybe that'll benefit me. So it's like, right, you got to be in the lion's den to kind of be able to strike a certain blow that only he can under those circumstances, because he has easier access going to Osaka and being on the inside to help if he's, like, you know, submits himself. So that's where I was like, because it definitely felt like Gin was implying, like, right, is this really the end for you, or do you have a plan? And it feels like, considering this Crimson Sky stuff, it feels like this might be a part of that. But once again, Toranaga's not telling anybody about it, so maybe it's just a thing. He is backed into a corner, he has nothing to do, but I'm like, I don't think that's going to be the case. It feels like he's too sly of a fox to just let that be. It was actually interesting too, because like we heard that story near the end of the episode from the perspective of him and Hiromatsu, where it's like, oh yeah, you were there. Like, my brother told that story, and I'm surprised you didn't correct him. He was like, he thought it was about the, like, shitting himself upon being a hostage, but it's like, no, the war battle, my first battle, and it's like, no, like, I didn't, it wasn't a single stroke. He's like, it took me 9 slices to get home dude's head completely severed. It's like, Jesus. And especially because he's not, and that's the effed up thing. Like, he probably wasn't dead after the first slice or anything. I mean, yeah, he might have gutted himself. He's got his guts hanging out. He's bleeding a little bit, but he's not dead. It's excruciating. Like, it's supposed to be like a seamless, like, hey, like, you want, I mean, like, it's like any execution. You want to make that as neat as possible. Like, whether it's like you know, you're getting, like, whether it's the axe or well, it's the guillotine, you want that to be one clean slice of just it, and for it to all be over in an instant. 9 slices is a lot. Once again, you're probably dead, hopefully halfway through that, hopefully earlier than that, but there's probably a good chance. And there's also the element of, yeah, but if you don't do it, you still got to see it all the way through. But even Toranaga's like, why would anyone ask a 12-year-old to be their second under those circumstances? Kind of showcasing also, like, right, I haven't always been perfect. I make mistakes. You know, my legend has kind of grown, and that word got out that was just single stroke. It's like, no, it took me 9 whacks at his neck to get his head completely severed. That was, and even Hiromatsu was like, yeah, you fucking made a mess. And I was like, I bet it was a fucking mess. That was the most sloppiest decapitation you probably ever fucking seen in your life. You have Yabushige and John. Well, let's circle over to John, who's trying to find out what role he plays in this whole Crimson Sky situation. He's kind of a little bit going back to the point he had made to Toranaga last episode about what move he can make, but it's also like, what can you do under these circumstances, John? And it's like, he doesn't, well, that was more so Mariko asking that, but he doesn't really know. He wants to do something besides just sitting here waiting to die. But yeah, like, Toranaga, like, isn't going to discuss anything. He won't even talk to John about Crimson Sky. It's like, but he's like, just let Toranaga know that I am here by his side, and like, whatever he needs of me, I will see it through. Because I think John figures, like, he's hey, we're in this in for a penny, in for a pound type of situation, and we're pretty far down the rabbit hole. We're definitely in for more than a pound in this situation. But it's just that, like, John is hedging his bets on Toranaga coming out winning, you know? And that was kind of a point early on in the season, too, of like, oh, do you think you'll survive all this? He's like, yeah, you know, what happens if, like, he I think it was him and Rodriguez, that whole thing of like, yes, but what if I win? You know, hedging your bets in that regard. That was even before he lined up with Toranaga, I believe. I could be mistaken, or maybe that was after Toranaga. I don't remember now. Either way, Yabushige and him kind of like exchange words, even though neither one can understand each other. But like Yabushige's just like tired because he's like, every time it seems like I escape death, another thing happens. Because I forgot he got a surprise delivery. Like he tried to like send one of his generals to talk to Ishido for him, but it turns out that general's head got sent back. It's like, cool. So any attempts of trying to side with Ishido at this point in time are dead in the water. You are what happens to Toranaga happens to you, because like half the men will have to. I don't know if it's like women will be able to decide, but the men won't be able to, because the way Mariko phrased it, she said specifically like half the men will have to commit seppuku. So I'm like, I don't know if that's like meaning like all the men and just the women and children will be able to survive, but I think she specifically said half. So I think it is like whatever men there, half of them will have to kill themselves just to kind of balance the scales of some form of equilibrium in all of this, and to keep the honor and tradition. But Yabushige is like taking all his frustrations out on John, because he has nothing else he can do about it, because he's like, once again, every time I turn around, I'm screwed over. When it just feels like, oh, I took one step forward, I'm always taking at least 2 steps back, and now I'm just like screwed. I have no more, he's always been playing both sides of things, and now it's like, no, you're stuck on Toranaga's side. No more playing both sides of the fence anymore situation. You're locked in on Toranaga's side, so whatever happens, that's your fate. And he's kind of dueling it out with John, who doesn't know how to properly use swords. It almost seemed like Yabushige was trying to train him, but also, once again, it's just like, I need to take this all out on you because you've been the thorn in my side. Hell, even I think Omi was the one kind of broaching that of like, it sucks. This all happened because of that barbarian. Him coming into our lives changed everything. It's like, this village wouldn't even be, it's so different from what it was. It's like, yeah, it was a poor fishing village. It's like, yeah, but it was quiet and peaceful. But then like, Saiki is overhearing Omi and Nagakado's conversation, because Nagakado, it's like, oh, my dad will come up with something, and there's a whole conversation about a beautiful death, which obviously even Saki doesn't have change that same perspective as his nephew on death, because he's all about like, oh, the honor and beauty of death, a beautiful death, and the honor of it, whatever it is, I'll accept it. But it's also like, there is no death, it's like, I forgot the analogy he used, but it's like, yeah, it's not beautiful. It's just like, it is what it is, like you want to, like, Nagakado has like a very like it fantasized like notion of what it is with honor and stuff like that, because even Toranaga said, right, it's always those who've never set foot on a battlefield who are so quick to want to go to battle. Because once again, Nagakado feels like he has so much to prove, specifically to himself and to others, and also to his own father. But circling back to the Yabushige of it all, during their little spout, Buntaro was nearby, and he got set off, and he like pulls a blade on John, and eventually goes to Toranaga, and he's like, I want to speak to you, and I want Mariko to be here. I want permission to slice off the barbarian's head. It's like, yeah, like basically the way he's looking at my wife, I don't like it. I know he's trying to go after her. It's like, okay, cool. But if you're going to go for his head, that must mean that your wife must be responding to that. And he's like, no. It's like, no. If you're saying it's a cheating situation going on here, she must be part of it, right, as well. Because he's like, that if that's the case, you'd have to take both of their heads at the same time. He's like, I don't want to take my wife's head. It's like, okay then, so if you're not going to accuse her of adultery and all that shit, you can't actually accuse the Anjin. He's like, I just want to take his head. But he's like, I'm sorry, I let my feelings get the best of me. And now Toranaga's frustrated because he's like, yo, like, figure this shit out. Either you are loyal to me, and why does it seem like you're loyal to like the barbarian? Like, you're kind of gaining more what he wants. Like, you yourself seem to be torn between two masters, like the episode, like title of like episode 2, where it's like, are you serving me and my interests? Are you serving, to get revenge against the men who, the enemies of your father and stuff? Like, are you really just you're going to take my side or the barbarians? But you have to make a choice. And for her, it's like, I have served you wholeheartedly. All I ask for is death, because every hour that I'm still alive, it feels like drowning. Because that's also why Bunsoro doesn't want to kill her, because he cares about her, but also it's just her being so okay with like, yeah, whatever my husband deems as my fate, let it be that case. Because she's like, yo, I welcome death. And Bunsoro, it just frustrates him even more of like, if the circumstances were different, like if the Anjin was asking you to live, would you live for him? Whereas, like, for me, I'm asking you to live, and you just resent me more each and every year. And even in this moment, just frustrates him even more. On that conversation of death, we also catch up with Fuji, who talks to Hiromatsu, and she gets brought a box. I guess it's supposed to be, was it Tadayoshi and her baby? Was it Todoyoshi? I think it's Tada or Todoyoshi, the guy, her husband that died in episode 1 along with her baby. Their ashes were brought to her, and she's like happy to say like, right, when it's all said and done, my death will come and I'll be reunited with them. But it's like her grandfather's like, well, don't you want to live? But for her, it's just kind of like, why live? She's in the same boat as Mariko. It's just like both of them are just waiting for death. That's why she's also preparing for battle. You like see her later on with Naginata, like ready for fighting if she needs to. And even Nagakado is like, I'm sorry, if I was braver, like your husband wouldn't even been in that situation. If I had stepped up to defend my father's honor, like I'd be the one that has to commit seppuku most likely. I mean, that would have caused issues for like Toranaga. I don't know how that situation would have worked in that regard. Maybe only he would have had to commit seppuku, because it worked down, not up. At least I think that's how that works. Because I was about to say, like, I don't think Toranaga would have had to commit seppuku in that situation if it was his own flesh and blood that did it. Like, and if it was Nagakado in that moment, I don't know how that would work necessarily. And like I said, I figured it would like trickle down, but it's like he has Toranaga's bloodline, so like I said, does it trickle back up and Toranaga would have to suffer the same fate or not? It's kind of a moot point because it didn't happen, but he was apologizing. It's like, your husband and your baby would still be alive if I was braver. But for her, it's just like, we do what we can do. That's all we really can. Like, and we'll kind of have to see how things, like how the chips lie at the end of all of this, one way or another. And that's all there is really to it. All there is to life. We can't go back and change it. We just have to do what we can and hope for the best. Which I think maybe that notion in itself, with a culmination of everything else, that inspired Nagakado to do what he does later on. Well, especially because his father submits. It's like, oh, I have no plan, no Crimson Sky, send me to Osaka, and just accepts it. And you have John standing up, just saying like, oh, look at you following Toranaga, and look where it's landed you. All of you are dead, and he just walks away. Because he's just like, I'm not going to even sit around for this bullshit. Why? And just bounces. No one bothers stopping him, so. But like I said, I think all of that really pushed Nagakado, that later on, he makes some moves because he has Lady Kiku. Like, he has his whole assassination plot. I thought he was going to have her do it, but I guess it's like, nah, I'm going to keep him at ease, lower his guard, get some, like, intel, and be able to set things up so that Nagakado and some of his people could come in to try and assassinate him. Especially because it's like, we see that he's into some hardcore shit. He's into, like, asphyxiation type of shit, because he's being, like, choked by, like, the scarf, and she's tugging on it, and you're like, okay. And she's like, right, how about something more pleasurable? That's where I was like, oh, she's going to handle it herself. It's like, no, she said, I guess, like, Omi kind of, like, well, I was about to say, like, because Omi hasn't been able to talk to her, so how did that get set up that way? But I guess maybe Nagakado was able to talk to her without issue. I don't know, but either way, he tried to go after, Nagakado tried to go after, Psyche, and for the most part, he had him cornered, except the most, what the fuck? He slips and bashes his head on a rock and bleeds out and dies. I was like, what the fuck? And just like the last line of the episode is Psyche being like, yeah, and what's beautiful about that? Like, kind of almost implying, like, right, there was no honor, there was no, oh, you didn't go into battle or anything like that. It almost feels poetic in a way, because how his first, like, kill that we got to really see in the show was, like, him and Jozen and how that was handled. So it's almost like, I don't know if there's almost supposed to be some kind of like tragic irony to like, right, you never like got your honor on the battlefield like you wanted. You got it in very sloppy ways of the Jozen situation. You almost had it this way, but this ended horribly. And now it's just like, and just even how the credits roll. The credits is just no music or nothing, just the constant rain dropping heavily in the background. It's like, that's brutal. I'm like, what does that mean for Toranaga? What is he going to do? Like, now that his son made a move like that, what does Saiki do? And what does that make Toranaga decide to do now that it's like, I'm sure there's going to be a complicated thing of, I loved my son. I wish I told him more, but it was like, you're not really in a position. It's not the era to be all about love, you know, and being so open and vulnerable in that regard. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what moves end up being made. I mean, we're counting down. There's only 3 episodes of the show left, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see where things kind of go on that front. The Buntaro stuff, it's like, oh, is that shit really buried? It's like, no, like every time you turn around, that keeps getting reheated. So I'm like, where are things between him and John going to play out, especially with Mariko kind of caught in the middle of that, plus her wanting her own death, you know, as well as like, you know, serving St. Toranaga, which obviously that might not be for much longer. It's going to be interesting to see where the next episode takes us with all of this, because this is actually interesting because we didn't cut back to Osaka at all, because at least some of these episodes we cut back to Osaka and stuff. It's like, no, that's all just, we're focusing on Toranaga and Saiki and them. Like, we didn't cut away except from past stuff in the beginning. We pretty much stayed present day the entire time and specifically stayed with Toranaga and them, which I thought was interesting. So, but really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.